OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
There's no way that's true. All right, you're very welcome along to this morning's OTB AM. It's Ger and Owen with you all the way through until 10. Owen, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger. How are things?
Very well. Nathan is with us. Nathan, what's rare is wonderful. You're with us most times. I understand. How are you?
I like everybody else here. I was wondering what you were just about to say as you were coming on air.
Hey, look, you've got to be in the studio to know the truth of these things, Nathan. You're either in or you're out. How are you?
I'm great. I'm fantastic. PGA Tour golf on a Wednesday. What a treat.
Oh yeah, why is that happening?
NFL playoffs on Sunday night, so the golfing gods have realised they cannot compete when it comes to TV viewers, so they've pushed the tournament back to a Saturday.
I was on the Hard Shoulder with Kieran Cuddy talking about this week about television and the future of TV. There was the streaming. The figures had come out for the top most watched programs in England since the turn of the millennium, and basically it was the closing ceremony of the London Olympics. So it was the closing instead of the opening, because the closing was a complete dud. But anyway, I guess everybody was like, "Ooh, the opening was great. We can't miss the closing," and they didn't realise that it wasn't a Danny Boyle special. But most of the rest of them, apart from the Only Fools and Horses finale, were sports events, and they were wondering what is it about the power of sport that is enduring, that still gets these mass audiences. And just last weekend, the NFL put up massive figures for Green Bay versus San Francisco, which was a slugfest in the snow, with, I guess, one of the most famous Americans at the moment, Aaron Rodgers, who's very controversial, and a lot of people were tuning in to see if he was going to wet the bed, and he did. And so, it's one of those things. But are we as attuned to this stuff in Ireland as we should be? Do we?
I would say yes. I'd say it's
we don't talk about it a lot, though.
But like if we're talking about the figures, for example, I think it's very telling, the television figures that came out a couple of weeks ago, that the Late Late Toy Show is the only thing that
is non-sport.
That's non-sport in the top few, and it's exclusivity, isn't it? That if you like things that aren't sport, be it current affairs or drama or comedy, there are a multitude of different ways for you to scratch your itch. Whereas if you're a sports fan, on the first Sunday of September, you're watching the All-Ireland hurling final. July, whatever.
Is it the second Saturday at 5 o'clock or the third? What?
Yeah. And there's only one place you're getting it. There's, I would say that people have done a pretty good job in terms of combating illegal streaming to a point. And I still think the figures are holding up very, very well. That I think that it hasn't diminished the streaming figures as much as
I'm an old man. I find it hard to find an illegal stream sometimes when I'm looking for a specific thing. It's just, I find it hard, and unless it's there straight away, that's why everybody's happy to pay for stuff, because it's ease,
convenient, and also it's something that we do.
Like with Spotify, we had music for free, every single track you wanted in the world for free when Napster was in. And nobody ever thought that you're never going to pay for music again. Now it's like 13 quid a month. Absolutely no problems.
Yeah, I can't be bothered going into LimeWire and dragging clips across from LimeWire into iTunes. Because it's something that we enjoy. Why diminish your enjoyment by making it work?
I need to pre-plan what I want to listen to in 5 days' time. No.
I would pay the money for the convenience.
And I think it's exactly the same thing, and the quality is much better now from the whatever platform you're watching, whatever sports event is on. I do wonder though if the terrestrial broadcasters are actually getting a bit of a sweetheart deal, because these need to be free to air, and it's like, well, actually everybody's watching these, and you're making out like bandits on this.
Yeah,
share some of the money, buddies. Give us back.
Well, look at the figures for last year, and it's not pretty for the hurling snobs when far more people watched England against Denmark in the European Championship semi-final than watched the All-Ireland hurling final. But nearly 900,000 people watched England against Denmark in Ireland alone. And if you think about in the UK, I think Sky's record viewing for a Premier League game is still only around 3 million. So the numbers who are watching, and I know they figure in people who watch in pubs and all that, like the numbers who are watching, are far lower than on terrestrial TV than would watch early FA Cup rounds, but it's a very specific audience. And like when we're talking about American sport and the viewing figures, like golf's viewing figures have collapsed over the last few years. Like, they are right not to try and compete with the NFL, but there's very little that golf can compete with right now. And I do wonder how much of a panic they're in about it, because they're probably still getting their white male Republican in his 50s millionaire viewer. So do they care that they're not getting anybody else, that they're not getting the mass audience?
Well, they're selling a lot of Cialis and Viagra to those guys, and
well,
they're happy enough.
They've just done $1 billion deal with NBC. So is it the type of viewer or the amount of viewers that's important anymore?
Like it's interesting because they've obviously got a product that is so sellable in the short clip format, just like the NBA have done in terms of selling their quarters or just putting out their clips for free. But I find if you're watching golf, Nathan, the clip isn't enough. Like, people aren't there to watch the moment of magic, knowing that they're clicking into a Twitter clip, getting a moment of magic. It is about the dedication of sitting in front of it for hours and getting the payoff live on television. That is the great thing about watching golf. The problem is, do people see it that way? Do people have 4 hours to invest in it on a Sunday afternoon?
And that's the thing, in America, it's on a Sunday afternoon that they're watching it. I'd agree. The last couple of weeks have been in Hawaii where it's not finishing till 3 a.m, so I end up watching back the highlights on Sky the morning after, and it's a sort of quick 10-minute run through, and you're just watching it to know what happened. There's no drama. There's no sense of what could happen. And also what golf has lost a little bit is the sense of calamity. I think when people are watching, they want to feel that something could go wrong, whereas in golf right now,
they fix it.
That doesn't happen. It's it's an absolute birdie fest. You're having to get to 25, 30 under par to win. You're not always going to get the Jean Van de Velde type scenario, but you want a sense that if a player makes a mistake, he's going to be punished for it, and that keeps you gripped right till the very end. Whereas I think in golf, that's not there right now. So
okay. I see what you did though, Nathan. You hijacked our conversation about American football and GAA and made it exclusively about golf. I mean, it's the most on-brand thing you've done this year, and I think it might be the most on-brand thing you do all year. It's 7:37 this morning here on OTB AM. Let me tell you about what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. And if you want to get involved, we'd love to hear from you. 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or of course, you can always leave a comment on the YouTube stream. We're going to talk a little bit about the top 10 footballers outside the top football clubs with Nathan in just a moment. We're going to do our depth chart on Scrum-halves with Tomas O'Leary just after 8:10 this morning. We're going to talk to the Irish woman who is rowing across the Atlantic. Fingers crossed if the satellite connection actually works a little bit later on. We'll bring you Deal or No Deal, and we've loads more as well besides. Be good to hear from you if you want to get something off your sporting chest this morning. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. So we like our top 10s on this show, Nathan. We particularly like our controversial top 10s where there's room for us. Ryan McHugh is going to join us as well. Sorry. So you've been looking at the best players. What's the criteria here?
That's a great question, Jared. I was sitting down last night thinking that myself. What is the criteria here? It's obviously there's a little mix of talent. There's a little bit of what they've done this season, and there's a bit of players the team should be looking at to sign, whether in January, which is probably unlikely for most, or the coming summer.
Top 10 outside the top 10. Top 10 outside the top 10 clubs, top 10 outside the top 10 players.
Top 10 clubs. So, your Brightons and your Wolves, they're in that top 10 at the moment. They don't get in here. Well, Villa are outside the top 10, Ger.
All right.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it's very true.
It's true.
See yourselves as a big club, but still outside the top 10.
I mean, this week. So when was the cutoff point? It was this week, was it? It's
yesterday.
Right now. Okay.
Right now, right here, right now.
So Leicester City, no players in this because they're 10th.
No, exactly.
Villa are
outside
11th.
the top 10.
Villa are 11th on one. They've conceded one goal more.
Exactly.
Okay, fair enough.
You got to have a criteria.
Well, that's what I was asking. What the criteria are, and
I can't believe we've made a black and white thing a debate on this show.
The one black and white bit I had was outside the top 10.
Okay, let's go for it. Let's go for it. I'm
a bit concerned now because if you're getting confused by the outside the top 10, it's only going to go downhill from here.
All right. Okay, come on.
Number 10, Ger, in a 10. Are we doing a ranking or strict? Do you just want the 10 or do you want them 10 to 1?
No, 10 to 1 because you've obviously done a 10 to 1.
Yeah. 10 to 1. I'm going with Eberechi Eze, who is maybe the most skillful player, or right up there in the teams outside the top 10. He obviously had a horrible injury at the end of last season, but he's just full of trickery. He's full of mischief. He's full of intent. He's still very young. He's only 23, and he's getting himself back into the Crystal Palace side. Every time you watch him, you think, old school, sort of runs with the ball, constantly tries to do the right thing, constantly tries to create something. In a Palace team that at times could be overshadowed by Wilf Zaha, but he is a really easy, natural successor for Wilf Zaha. But I think in modern football, where people want to be entertained, and you just have to look at Crystal Palace and how much their fans are enjoying life under Patrick Vieira compared to Roy Hodgson, I think a lot of teams will want to Eberechi Eze. What he needs to do to push himself up this list is to probably start adding a few more goals. Like, the injury was a big setback. He only scored 4 last season, a lot of appearances off the bench. But if he can suddenly become a player who scores even 10 goals a season, he is going to be going right to the very, very top.
He's actually 23, so he's not a kid.
No, he's not bursting onto the scene at 18, 19. He had a good few seasons at QPR and did score a lot of goals in the championship in his last season there, got well into double figures, so he does have that sort of potential. And the injury was a huge setback because I think it looked like he was comfortable in the Premier League for the last few months of last season, did his Achilles, ends up missing 6 months. It's sort of been easing him back in over the last few weeks. There's been a bit of speculation about Wilfried Zaha's future over the last few weeks, which would automatically means he has a straightforward spot on that really exciting Crystal Palace team. So I think next season, Eberechi Eze and the latter half of this season is somebody you're going to get really excited about.
Okay, who's at 9?
Ilham Meslier, 21, maybe the best young goalkeeper in the Premier League right now. Has had a tough season at Leeds.
Owen hates him.
Behind. I heard this, and one of the reasons why I made sure.
Owen despises.
I feel like I'm being indirected here. I'm being
he thinks he's the worst goalkeeper
you can tag me in the tweet, Nathan. It's okay.
I'm fine. I've no problem doing it. I think again you're looking at a player at 21 who plays a thoroughly modern style of football for a goalkeeper, really comfortable with the ball at his feet, makes a lot of good saves. He just has, he does have a face that you wouldn't really trust. And I can understand Owen's dislike for him because of that.
He's even more boyish than him. That's what it is. It's jealousy.
Well, exactly.
You're he makes me look old.
The French international goalkeeper in the next couple of years. I could not understand Owen's criticism of him a few weeks back at all. Like, it's a tough gig being the Leeds goalkeeper at the moment when they're constantly having to rotate defenders. Did you at the end of it?
I think I did. I think I accepted I was wrong, to be honest. I didn't.
So I think he will be one that a lot of those top teams will be looking at. Maybe even a Paris Saint-Germain in a few years will be looking at. They signed Donnarumma, obviously, but that the very top teams will be looking at over the next 2 or 3 years as somebody who could be their goalkeeper for a long, long time. And even this season, as Leeds have struggled, so he makes some brilliant saves, and his distribution is top class.
I know that Phil has been constantly reminding me of what I said about Ilham Meslier a couple of weeks ago, and has given me constant updates, having watched all 90 minutes of all Leeds' games since then, on any little error he makes, because it feels that I'm in on the ground level of Ilham Meslier being a flop one day. But I apologise for that. I just don't think that's the case. I think that conversation started around Caoimhín Kelleher. I don't want to get off track too much here, but Caoimhín Kelleher, Ilham Meslier, are they on similar trajectories when you're talking about Meslier in those glowing terms?
Well, Meslier has played an awful lot more games.
Yeah, he's ahead of him, isn't he?
Which means he is ahead of Caoimhín Kelleher. They actually have a similar look and stance. They both feel quite lanky, maybe because they haven't quite filled out because they're still very young players. So, like, Meslier is up on 120 games between Lorient and Leeds. So Caoimhín Kelleher just needs to get that time under his belt. And yeah, Again, Caoimhín Kelleher is going to be stepping down no matter where he goes from Liverpool if he does go over the next 2 or 3 years, whereas Ilham Meslier is only going to be going up. Maybe they meet somewhere in the middle.
Meslier is 5 centimetres taller than Caoimhín Kelleher, according to
what?
It. Yeah.
Caoimhín Kelleher is only 6 foot.
5 centimetres. Kelleher's 188.
Okay.
Says.
I like to work in inches when we're talking goalkeepers, Jer.
I know, yeah, but ayo.
He's 6'2" is Caoimhín Kelleher.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 3 inches is 5 centimetres.
There you go. It's good. This is a show where we learn things. We move on to number 8.
Yeah, right, Jer.
Keep going, Nathan.
Number 8, I'm going for Dwight McNeil of Burnley. Somewhat overshadowed by Maxwell Cornet this season. Another great left-sided player alerted me to the potential of Dwight McNeil a couple of years ago. Kevin Kilbane was a very big fan. I was never quite convinced, but I've started watching him quite closely since.
Oh, Kevin knows more about football than you do. Oh, what a shock.
I wouldn't say that. He spotted one player that one time.
His 175 million caps would... Anyway, go on. Sorry.
Go on. Listen, he hasn't done a huge amount this season in a Burnley side that haven't played in about 6 months, but when he gets on the ball, he just oozes quality. Burnley don't have a lot of possession. He can slow it down. He can play things at his own pace. He can pick out a pass. And I was surprised he's still only 22. It feels like he's been around for a long time. He barely missed a game over the last 3 years. Type of player you think, again, could fit into one of those top 4, top 5 sides. I've seen him linked with, an Everton, maybe even an Aston Villa. I don't know if because you're going to end up spending 35-40 million on him in all likelihood.
Is it that price? Yeah.
And when that happens,
because he's English,
because he's young, because he's played a lot of games, and he's probably worth that. But if you spend that and you're going to an Everton or a Villa, everyone expects you to come and score 8-10 goals a season, to be the creator, to be the dynamic one. And maybe he is that on the better side under a different type of manager to a Sean Dyche, where actually I think his style of play would fit in perfectly with a real top quality side where they have a lot of possession and he can fit into that. So there's even been talk that he could go in this transfer window. I can't imagine Burnley will let somebody else go with Chris Wood. They've obviously got massive financial issues at the moment, but Dwight McNeil I would expect will go to a team inside the top 10 and will not be able to make this list, Ger, next season.
Fair enough. Or else he joins Everton and he's on the list as one of our number ones next season. Go on, what's next?
Right, exactly. Here's a guy who I actually would have had. If we were doing the top players outside the top 6 last season, I would have had this guy as number 1. Richarlison, who I think was killed by Brazil during the summer, was the main issue for Richarlison because they played him at the Olympics and then they played him in the Copa America. He played the full season, barely missing a game for Everton. He played probably 60, 65 matches over the course of 12 months with no break coming into the season. And he's been really flat as part of a pretty brutal Everton team this season. But the previous 2-3 years, I just thought he got better and better. There is obviously a bit of a stereotype about Brazilian players, particularly attacking Brazilian players, a player and all of that. I actually find Richarlison works incredibly hard, and when he was out on the right hand side for Everton in front of Seamus Coleman, like they had a really good partnership over there. He can score goals, he's a bit of a nuisance, he's got a bit of trickery. So I think if Everton and a new manager can get Richarlison back playing, I think again he's a player who can deliver an awful lot for I was going to say a very good team, a top team. I know they get very upset at Everton if you don't talk about them in the right way, but he's unquestionably had a big dip this year, but I think Richarlison is top class.
Bit of a bargain basement option, relatively speaking, for teams this summer, where you buy a player in bad form, but you know that his ceiling is quite high.
Well, you see, the problem for Richarlison is they spent 40 million on him. So is he a better player now than when he arrived? You'd have to say he is. His reputation has been enhanced. He's had 3-4 years in the Premier League, scored a lot of goals. So maybe 40 million is bargain basement. Maybe they're happy to move him on and the manager's trying to change the club completely. But if he gets any sort of form going, you probably are looking at somebody who's a sort of 60, 70 million. So I'm not quite sure you'll get Richarlison in that sort of bargain basement. And again, quite young for the amount of games that he has played. So I think Richarlison, I've always liked Richarlison since the first couple of seasons he's there.
Yeah,
and he's let me down badly this year.
He has. I remember you were like, Richarlison, 80-1, he's going to be the top scorer. And then Calvert-Lewin, 80-1, actually was in the running to be top scorer, but Nathan didn't tip that on our show. Anyway, Richarlison's only 24, so yeah, you can see how they would be hopeful that a little uptick in form over the last few months of this year, and they will get 60-70 million for him in the summer, and that's money that they could properly reinvest. But or else you try and build around him. Is he the type of player you just knuckle down and say, right, you're going to be one of our creative players, you and Calvert-Lewin are actually enough for us to be a top 10 team, and then if we layer in some reasonable recruitment, it doesn't have to be sensational recruitment, reasonable recruitment.
Well, I assume that has been the plan at Everton for the last 2 or 3 seasons, has been to just add a player of a certain quality in around Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and it's never happened. Like, how many number 10s have they tried to buy over the last 4 or 5 years, and none of them have been able to create enough for them. And also, I guess with Everton, that new stadium is underway. They're going to be in there maybe 2024. Are you going to sell your best players between now and then? Maybe you need to sell them to pay for it, but also you want to have those superstars there when you move in.
Yeah. Okay, so Richarlison is number 60?
7.
Number 7. Wow, this is going to go on all day, isn't it? Number 6, I'm going for Mark Gahey. Crystal Palace, centre back, 21. There's going to be a couple of former Chelsea players or current Chelsea players, whatever way you want to look at it. Another one of these Chelsea guys who you sort of didn't hear a huge amount of, was never really near at the first team, spent last season out at loan at Swansea, and then during the summer you go, wait a second, Crystal Palace are spending 18 million quid on a guy I've barely heard of from Chelsea, but he's been outstanding. Looks like a player who's spent a lot of time at a top club's academy in terms of his comfort on the ball, and it was the perfect move at the right time, because I think if Mark Gahey goes to Crystal Palace last year under Roy Hodgson, where they're playing backs to the wall football the whole time, that may not be his game. But in a Palace side that are constantly trying to play it out from the back now, that are playing that more modern style, that are trying to link it up between defence and midfield, again, every time I've watched him, he's been brilliant. He looks tough as nails, and to be playing centre back every week in the Premier League at 21, I think shows his potential. Patrick Vieira obviously sees a lot in him. I assume Chelsea have some sort of a buyback clause there. Like, if you think Chelsea could have had Gehi and Tamori as their centre-half partnership. Even right now, you would think, bloody hell, those two at 21-22 would be as good as it gets. So they obviously are just overflowing with talent. We're willing to let this guy go, and he's been a brilliant signing for Crystal Palace. And don't be surprised if he ends up back at Chelsea at some stage over the next few years.
They need some sort of setup like Red Bull have Toro Rosso, where they can just have these kids and just see them develop and actually allow that partnership to develop and copy and paste it into the Chelsea team over a period of time, or maybe even more close to the point, like a Manchester City setup where they have a number of different clubs where they can control this a bit more than the situation that they're in at the moment.
Yeah, you look at what Manchester City have done similar things over the last couple of years with Jack Harrison, who ends up spending a lot of time out on loan, and eventually they're able to sell him for Leeds. What Chelsea are clearly looking at is, unless you are the absolute elite level who are going to fit into our squad, we're willing to let you go. Like 18 million, I'm sure, pays for your academy for the entire year, and Chelsea were able to sell 3 or 4 of those. You look at Borja at Southampton, Livermento going as well. Like Borja, I think's gone on loan, but they're 2 of the best young players around, again, who've come through that Chelsea system. They've been able to cash in on one of them for another 20 million. That is a nice little conveyor belt of cash coming in every single summer.
I'm pretty sure the Douglas Luiz deal with Villa had like a buyback, but it ran out after a period of time, and certainly there was rumours about it. Last summer would have been the last summer that they could have used and exercised that clause, and otherwise now they just have to pay the market price. Again, this stuff isn't published unless there's another football leaks, but Gehi signed a 5-year deal with Palace. They never make public the fact that there's a buyback or otherwise. That kind of comes out at some point when, I guess, the player's agent is looking for a new contract, leaks that the parent club wants to get the player back even though he's no longer the parent club, and that's why you get the new deal, and some kind of backroom conversation is had and the buyback disappears. But like it's risky enough, because if this kid turns out to be as good as you say he is, that's a 40-50 million pound player, right? Young centre back at 24 who's played 200 Premier League matches. They're very, very rare.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see over the next few years how those deals go, because likewise with Tamori at AC Milan, there seems to be a split as to whether they have an option of bringing it back. And well, maybe Chelsea aren't the geniuses we make them out to be when you look at what's going on with Emerson Palmieri at Lyon at the moment, who's on loan, and they're desperate for a left back, and even though he's on loan, they can't seem to find a way of being able to actually get him back from Lyon for the remainder of the season. But is there, as it seems to be the case with Declan Rice, is there an embarrassment factor at Chelsea in any way, bringing players back, having let them go? I'd like to think business-wise, there's not. That if you have that clause there, and maybe it's because Declan Rice went so young and that they're going to have to spend straight up.
Yeah, well, there was no De Bruyne, Salah. They didn't. Maybe they've learned from those. That's a long time ago, in fairness. But like, if you put those 2 in that Chelsea team, that's the great sliding doors moment of the Chelsea fans. Like, maybe if Jose hadn't got rid of those guys. Anyway, keep going.
John McGinn. Brian Kerr gave me an awful lot of hassle on the commentary last year for talking about John McGinn's arse. And then I felt a little bit bad about talking about the size of John McGinn's arse, because he clearly has, the finest, most well-stacked arse in all of football. But then I heard John McGinn recently talking about his arse and been, quite delighted with the impact his arse can make.
We're living in the era of the arse. People like arses a lot, it turns out.
Well, particularly John McGinn's, I think.
They're very trendy.
Villa.
Yeah.
It makes a big impact. Watching him this season, seems to be that proper driving force of that Villa midfield at the moment. I thought last season when I saw him that maybe when he came back from injury, he was carrying a little bit and struggled to get about, because his game is all energy, all intensity. They've got a lot of really good attacking quality players in that Villa side at the moment. But McGinn, even though he's probably maybe even the oldest player on this list, if you're a top 6 team and you're looking for a quality midfielder who can slot right in straight away and do a job, the Villa are a selling club, that they can be easily approached and wouldn't stand in the way of anyone's dreams. So yeah, I think Villa had a few players who could have ended up on this list. Ollie Watkins, obviously, he's had a few injury problems. He was very, very close with Watkins. I know you're not fully convinced, I think, Ger, on Ollie Watkins.
We just need to add some more goals. That's it. Like, everything else is actually back to the level it was when he was scoring the goals, but it just needs to add that finishing, and that's not there at the moment.
Who you having, if you're doing this list, who you having from Villa?
Well, Ramsey. I mean, Ramsey's burst on the scene this year by getting loads of game time, and he's got game time because of injuries and has been absolutely sensational. Like the rest of those kids, Emi Martinez.
I was going to say Emi Martinez, and obviously to a lesser degree Buendia if he can come good, but right now you're not having him.
Buendia is coming good, and I mean, who knows? Maybe Coutinho is on this list at the end of the season.
Maybe Luca Dean's on this list by the end of the season.
Could
so much talent.
And I mean, if you're talking about
maybe Villa won't be able to be on this list by the end of the season.
Villa won't be on this list. There's not a hope Villa are on this list at the end of the season.
I was going to say Kieran Trippier could potentially be on this list come the end of the season. Just one thing on McGinn. I'm sure you'll remember the greatest piece of analysis during the Euros was Yaya Toure in The Athletic. He says if you look at a picture of McGinn, you can see he has very powerful legs and hips, and there are times when you could see him get the ball with his back to an England player, smell the danger was coming, and then use his bum to shield the ball from them. The bum is an important part, as it can create a moment of space between you and another player, so you have more time with the ball. So not just you, Nathan, Yaya Toure as well, hopping on the John McGinn arse bandwagon.
Big old bandwagon.
Big old bandwagon. Room for everybody.
Again, I go back to the point that United were linked with him, not necessarily just because of what he can do on the field, but because of the character. And it's clear that Manchester United have not enough character in the dressing room, that dressing room is just this weird FC Hollywood orgy of ego. And McGinn's going to walk in and have an impact on that. So if they get 60-80 million for that, yeah, go for it.
Well, if you get 60-80 million, absolutely you go for it. I think we probably spoke about Seamus Coleman in similar terms a couple of years ago at Manchester United. Was he the best right back in the world at the time they could sign? No. But actually, maybe he's the type of character you want in that dressing room.
Exactly.
The problem United have at the moment is that you look at them, and whatever team they're playing, you look at the opposition midfield and think, those two guys would be better than what Manchester United have at the moment. Every time I watch them play Wolves, I think, geez, if they'd signed Ruben Neves and João Moutinho 4 years ago, Manchester United would be in a very different world right now. So, yes, John McGinn, I think, could definitely go and do a job. An all-Scottish midfield with Scott McTominay. A beautiful thing. Number 4, he was in our half team of the season. So he's got to be on this list. Conor Gallagher, on loan from Chelsea. Again, will he go back in the summer, or will they sell him to Crystal Palace, or will other teams have looked at one of the best players in the season so far who can score a goal from midfield? The obvious comparison has been made with Frank Lampard and his ability to pop up in the right place at the right time. I think he is somebody who's going to be in and around the England squad very soon. He's again just somebody who, in a Palace side, in a perfect team for him, that plays the way that all those top 3 or 4 teams play, in the amount of possession that they like to get, in the amount of touches he gets on the ball. Yeah, Gallagher has been one of those success stories from Chelsea, and the amount of time he spent out on loan and season on season just seems to improve. And maybe there is a place for him in that Chelsea midfield next season. The other thing, if you're in Conor Gallagher's boots, and maybe it's out of your hands what Chelsea want to do, is probably look at the managerial situation and go, okay, I could leave. Thomas Tuchel may not want me right now, but actually somebody else is going to come in 6 months' time, and they may play a very different shape. They may not play 3 at the back. They may want a different type of midfielder. You might want to go with a Jorginho and a Kante and me just in front to play Mason Mount somewhere else. So that may play in his mind as well.
All right, next.
Calvin Phillips. His absence this season, and for good chunks of it for Leeds, I think has been one of their main problems. The fact that they haven't had Phillips and Bamford has killed them for large parts of the season. But when you watch them trying to play it out from the back, and Calvin Phillips isn't there, like they play this 4-1-4-1 formation when they're at their very best, and he's the one who somehow has to knit it all together. They don't have anyone who can replace him at all, and I think his importance and his brilliance as a footballer has grown in his absence, that you really see what he can do. Range of passing, obviously has to press high and be intense, and what he's done with England as well, he's shown actually that he can do it at the very, very top level. So they'll
well, the top level is the Champions League. We know that, not international football.
Well, but
he's done it under pressure.
Available to him right now. This is going to be such an interesting summer at Leeds when they have 4 or 5 guys who could all go elsewhere. From Phillips, even a Bamford, who's not there, and Meslier, the great Luke Ayling. Luke Ayling would never leave Leeds. But I think Calvin Phillips, in that central midfield position, again, is somebody who would massively improve in Manchester United. In fact, we could have just done this as the top players outside the top 10 who would improve Manchester United.
Well, that's all of them. So go on. Are we done? 2 more?
No, we still have 2 more, Ger.
We'll fly through them because we're miles behind, yeah.
Okay, I apologise for that. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, number 2. I see he's been strongly linked with Arsenal. I have to say I was, as you mentioned, not fully expecting this turnaround from Dominic Calvert-Lewin over the last couple of years. Nobody has a better leap than Dominic Calvert-Lewin. There's no finer sight in football than Dominic Calvert-Lewin going up for a ball ahead of a big centre half and Dominic Calvert-Lewin chesting it down in front of the centre half's head. He's added goals. I also thought Dominic Calvert-Lewin was going to be a 8-9 goal a year striker who'd nick in one here and there. But I just think he's brought his game to a whole other level over the last couple of seasons. And injuries have hampered him this season. They've massively hampered everything. They've built their team around him over the last couple of seasons. And I think if he gets back fit, he is more than capable of playing for an Arsenal or better and leading the line for Arsenal for the next few years. And number one on the list, unquestionably, I think the best player outside the top 10. Rafinha, again, similar to Richarlison, that sort of stereotype of the Brazilians. They do this, they don't do this. I think he does it all. You do not get in that Marcelo Bielsa side without working your ass off. He has the tricks, he has the creativity, he has the finishing power. He scored a load of goals this season in the team that's been struggling. And I would be shocked if he's still at Leeds for next season. He could go to Liverpool, who've been strongly linked. He could go to any of those top 3 or 4 teams. Fits in perfectly into what Bielsa's trying to do at the moment. Again, still one of those guys who's probably younger than you would think. He's got 8 goals this season, 6 last season. He's just 25, so he's about to enter the peak of his career. Love watching him every time you see Leeds play, and he'd fit into a high press system. And if you're talking about replacements for Mo Salah, if he were to go, I think Rafinha would be near the top of that list.
All right, that's a list that I'm sure will be torn apart today on Twitter, no doubt. Nathan, thanks very much for that. Tommy Rooney is with us now to talk about the other big breaking news over the last 24 hours. James O'Donoghue's retirement, but also the fact that he's signed for the football pod.
Morning, Jer. Morning, Owen. Hi, Nathan. How you doing?
Tommy.
Yeah, the big transfer deal of the window so far. James O'Donoghue has unfortunately retired from inter-county football. He will no longer be playing from Kerry. Obviously left the panel last summer, but I think there was a bit of hope out there that maybe James would be back. Maybe he would get another shot under Jack O'Connor, the manager who gave him his debut back in 2010, or gave him his first chance in the McGrath Cup. But it wasn't to be for James. And lucky for us, he's joined the football pod for the forthcoming season, so we're really excited to have him.
Right. One thing that I think we should talk about this in a bit more detail later on is that we still seem happy enough for the best young and most skillful players in Gaelic games not to be protected the way all the other sports in the world have protected their best players. If you look at the age profile of someone like Ronaldo and Messi, there's no way that they would have survived a career in the 80s and 90s this long, because they would have had their ankles broken on numerous occasions. Tom Brady reaches his 44th birthday, Aaron Rodgers hits 37, 38, Ben Roethlisberger reaches that age. All of those players would have been dead by now in career terms, because they would have been killed by the tackles on and off the ball. All the sports in the world have looked at their best players and gone, that's what everybody wants to see. Why don't we protect them more? And it feels like we don't really protect the most skillful players. We still want the main thing to be able to brutalise people physically. That's the manliness that we strive for, as opposed to looking after somebody like that.
I agree with you, Jar. I think it's a savage game in terms of the wear and tear that's happening to players' bodies around the country. Like James O'Donoghue had 5 surgeries on his shoulders alone. He had a lot of injuries, lower limb injuries, that we didn't even have time to get into this week because we had to get talking about a few other things, but I'm sure we'll get to over the next couple of weeks. Like the amount of strain that's being put on inter-county players. See a lot of players talking about issues with their hips. We're going to start seeing it now with knees and hips over the next 10, 15 years. The impact is going to have players in their 40s and 50s. Like Nathan, I'm sure you know as well as anyone how lucky Andy Mitten was to come back and have that second part of his career, that swan song after his injuries. When he was in his late 20s. He was very lucky to come back. He worked in a gym. He probably had his life built around him that he was able to come back and bounce back from an injury like that. But a lot of players, we're starting to see a lot of players dropping out earlier now. In Tyrone this week, Tiernan McCann, 30 years old, probably had a lot to prove after last year when he didn't get started with Tyrone. He's walked away from the Tyrone panel after he won the All-Ireland last year. So I think it's a trend, Jer, and I think you're right. I think we probably have put up with it. Well,
and you do wonder, were all of the injuries that James O'Donoghue suffered, were they all fair? Because the game is physical enough, but it's the unfair stuff, it's the sucker punches, it's the constant kind of, I'm going to shoulder you in the back, I'm going to like leave a boot in when the ball is down that never gets blown, that it's the cut and thrust of championship and you're just supposed to take it. I do wonder about this, if we actually care enough about the people, and the sport would benefit from having James O'Donoghue still playing. And look, if it was a fair shoulder that did him, and that the five surgeries were all as a result of that, fair enough.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like James does tell us about the Kildare goalkeeper in 2015. He makes an unbelievable tackle on him, and it's a freak. He falls, and he's after having surgery on the shoulder. Does it again.
So he's already had surgery
while he's on the pitch. Yeah, he's already had surgery, and he ends up then having 2 surgeries that winter, one on each arm, and he's left pretty much like he can do nothing for 6 weeks. Like, he's lying on his back, he's watching TV, he's rehabbing one shoulder, and the other shoulder's in agony. Like, so, he spoke about a lot of regrets, James, on the first episode of season 2 of the Football Pod, and how he should have got more out of his body. Oh, and like as well as anyone, it's a travesty that Kerry really only saw 3 years of James O'Donoghue at his best.
Like, it is about the games that he missed as much as anything else. Kind of looking back at some of the really big coulda, shoulda, woulda moments after he wins the All-Irelands and also wins the Footballer of the Year, because you've got a situation in 2016, that All-Ireland semi-final against Dublin, where he can't start. The replay against Mayo in 2017, not that Kerry would have won with him in there anyway, but he's not on the starting team for that. Like, 2 really important moments in the trajectory of that team, where it becomes fallow years as opposed to properly being able to take at least one of those All-Irelands off Dublin. I think, though, the attitude, and I think James O'Donoghue maybe is a microcosm of the wider attitude that people would have around Kerry over the last 13 years at this point, is, geez, at least 2014 happened. At least there was the rub of the green at certain moments in 2014, either with Mayo, potentially even with Dublin getting knocked out in their semi-final against Donegal. At least 2014 happened, because there was so many moments looking back thinking, Jesus, if only James O'Donoghue was available just a little bit more, or if only he didn't have an extra surgery here or there, got back into the team a little bit earlier, or didn't go down with a couple of innocuous injuries that all of a sudden turn into 7-week layoffs. And it is just frustration, and like, it's a sad story in many ways, but there's nothing sad about what happened in 2014. He was unplayable that year. He was absolutely outstanding. But for me, one of the greatest moments of his career, of our relationship with James O'Donoghue, was actually in Clonus in 2018, where you had this one kind of closing shot of these 3 sort of great eras of footballers. James O'Donoghue with the ball in the forward, he puts it in long to Donaghy, who palms it down to David Clifford, back of the net, last second goal. Well, not last second, Kerry could have almost won that game, but there's a draw that day. It feels like a win for Kerry. Kerry ended up getting knocked out of the championship anyway the following week, but there was something about that moment where everything kind of felt right again, that all of a sudden these generations of footballers were all achieving what they were supposed to achieve in that one moment. And it's just sad that a lot of his career got wrestled away from him through injury.
I mean, I think even last year in the All-Ireland semi-final, if he'd been fit, if he'd had fitness, then he would have been able to influence that game that is still in the melting pot right at the end. So there's analysis this week as opposed to just the wake for his career as well.
Yeah, like, it is. There is a heavy element to the pod for about 20-25 minutes, but then James I think Owen will tell you, James is a bit of a messer, so we probably have our hands full for the forthcoming year. He did call for one big team to get relegated straight off the bat from the Division 1 this year, but I asked James for his teams to watch, and both lads actually picked out Kildare, Jerry. You'll be delighted to hear.
Ratcheting up the pressure. I don't like this.
Well, I don't know. They're raving about.
Who gets to a Leinster semi-final this year, Ger?
We got the final last year, Nathan. It was the fact that we didn't throw a punch. Didn't even try and throw a punch. That made everybody pretty happy. Jack O'Connor's gone, to be honest.
Well, whatever happened to that guy?
Well, we'll see.
That's the thing. It's Kerry against Kildare this weekend, as you all know, and we asked James what Paul Galvin is going to bring to the Kildare setup this year.
Paul must be promised a lot of training time to go in there, because he's not going to go in and just have a look. He's going to go in there hands-on. So, like, they must have promised him some good coaching time with those players. And if he gets it, the improvement that he can bring to a team is unreal, in my opinion. Because what Kildare have had probably in the last couple of years, even since McGeeney, they've had the physicality, they've had the fitness, but they were just missing something up front to kind of unlock the door. They might score 15 or 16 points, but can they get the 2 15 or 16, to take them to the next level? Like, Galvin has that in the locker to give them. And there's definitely enough forwards there to do the business for him. So, like, realistically, as Paddy says, the excitement up there is going to be unreal. So if he can go in and just tweak, what he's going to do, he's going to tweak their foot passing, because that's his thing. He's obsessed with foot passing. Inside the boot, 20 or 30 yard passes with vision, with a bit of class, the right run from the inside forward, not into out to in. He must have told me that 10,000 times when we were training. He didn't want to see you run out to the sideline. He wants to see the fake to the sideline, back in for the goal chance. Like, if he can get his hands stuck in properly to that Kildare team, they will be a force.
That's pretty interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, Ger is absolutely hopping out of his seat here with excitement about the prospect of that.
Well, because I've had some conversations with Paul Galvin about football in the past, and he's talked about body position, particularly in the half-forward line, and just like standing still to make space. And I was like, this is interesting. You don't hear people talking about this that much. That's why when you asked me, like, how do you feel about this? I was like, very excited, because like, it might take 18 months for that to seep in, or it might be instant. I don't know, but certainly it feels like there's something big thinking about this, as opposed to go out there and beat your man. You know, it's not that. It's like, it's far more cerebral, and maybe it works for a lot of people. If it can land for 3 or 4 players, that's going to be enough.
And if you have Paul Galvin showing them how to pass the ball like that, and you have Johnny Doyle on the inside then showing them how to kick it over the bar, like, the talent and the wisdom that is in that Kildare dressing room far surpasses anything they've had in recent years.
Carla Dwyer made a point talking to John Fogarty in the Examiner today that he was in with Cian O'Neill and they didn't have a full deck to deal with, that Jack O'Connor was able to get everybody back for the last couple of years. Everybody who wants to play football for Kildare is going to be given an opportunity, and nobody's going to be like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm going to commit this year, for this year at least. That there's like that honeymoon period that this group are going to have, and all they need to do to back it up is show progress and show ambition. Like, I don't think this is Kildare instantaneously contenders for an All-Ireland, but like, it's the type of thing that over a couple of seasons you could see them getting there. McGeeney wasn't an overnight success either. They got absolutely but they had a massive failure in the first year in the championship, and only kind of gathered some momentum through the qualifiers to the point where they were getting hammered in the All-Ireland quarter-final and made a bit of a comeback that made everybody think, actually, there's something here. So these things don't turn around overnight, but that's good. Being
in Division 1,
good insight.
I did cut the bit there just before the lads kind of forewarned the difficulties of Division 1 for Kildare this year and how it can go both ways. So I think if Kildare can manage to stay up, or definitely get a win or two, they don't want 8 defeats like Westmeath 5 or 6 years ago, or Meath getting beaten, you know, in every game as well in the last 2 years. Kildare need a win or two, I think. But you're right, Jared, it doesn't have to be straight away.
It's unbelievably attractive Division 1. That's the thing this year. Like, with Mayo getting promoted last year and joining the fold, it's a hell of a collection of teams. Staying up in that division would be an unbelievable start for that Kildare management. But the thing is, when you talk about like 18 months there potentially to get things right, they have 18 months. Nobody's expecting Kildare to stay in Division 1, let alone win a Leinster Championship or get to an All-Ireland semi-final. But it's something that they could potentially be looking at in 2 years' time, in 18 months' time, if the betting is good over the next little while. So it's a really exciting time for the county, I suspect.
Yeah, all right. So that's this week's edition of the Football Pod. Where can you get it?
You can get it everywhere at the minute, Ger, and then from next week on, it's going to be available exclusively first on the OTB Sports app every Tuesday around midday. So just look for the Football Pod, hit subscribe, and you can get James and Paddy Andrews every week. Tommy Rooney, good stuff. Nathan Murphy, thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Thanks, lads.
It's 8:14 here on OTB AM. We're brought to you live every morning across all of Off the Ball social channels. You can get us on OTB Sports Radio. It's probably the easiest place to listen to us these days. You can tell your smart speaker to play OTB Sports Radio. And we are brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors. We're going to talk the Scrum-half depth chart, and also the relationship between the Scrum-half and the out-half, and how that might go a long way to deciding how we all feel about the players representing Ireland in the Six Nations. We're going to check in on a cross-Atlantic rower. We're going to speak to Ryan McHugh. Plenty more to come. Stay tuned.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Club Championship Show on OTB Sports.
One of those games where you really saw the power of momentum in sport.
In his first county final appearance in 2019, he scored 1-3 and got man of the match. They're very, very economical.
How do you qualify as the most impressive statsman in the country?
Don't miss a moment of the GAA Club Championship. Download the OTB Sports app, subscribe to the GAA podcast feed, and watch the Club Championship Show every Wednesday across OTB's social channels.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Okay, it's 15 minutes past 8 and the Six Nations is hurtling towards us. We know the makeup of the Ireland squad at this stage, and I suppose one of the most interesting talking points is always going to be the 9-10 axis, and we're focusing on the 9s today with Tomas O'Leary, of course, a Grand Slam winning scrum-half himself. Tomas, good morning to you. How are you?
Hey Ger, how's the farm?
Yeah,
all good, boy.
Before we get into the depth chart, Joseph on our team was talking about this morning, and the relationship between the 9 and the 10, and how they actually need each other to impress as a collective. And sometimes the 10 plays well, sometimes the 9 plays well, but it's hard for either of them to play well if they're not playing well as a tandem. How important is that relationship?
Yeah, it's very important. I suppose from a 10's point of view, it's probably more important for him because he's the one obviously getting the service. He's the one, I suppose, being dictated to by the 9. The 9 is his hands on the ball. He makes most decisions in the game. You could argue maybe that the 10's decisions might be a bit more important, but every ruck the 9 gets, that he has a decision, whether he's hitting maybe a forward, maybe he's hitting the 10 out the back, or maybe whether he's going to kick the ball, all right? So the 9 makes more decisions, but it's important from his point of view then that the 10 is very clear in his instruction and demanding as well, because if you have a quiet 10 outside you, that makes probably you a little bit, I suppose, less, I suppose, more indecisive as a 9. So whereas if you have a 10 barking at you saying, hit up the forwards there, hit the second man, or hit me out the back, or flash it to me straight away, then it takes the decisions out of your head. So having a very decisive 10 outside you is very important. So, but I think more so for the 10, having a 9 who will be compliant and give you exactly what you want, I think that's important. But from a 9's point of view, then I think probably the pack in front of you and the ball you're getting. So, obviously if your pack is on top, whether that be at scrum time or maul time, you're getting an arm to a ride, then you can give as good service to the 10 as possible. You're on the front foot. Same with the ruck ball. You hear Irish teams in particular, and all teams talk about the breakdown, how important that is. And I know Paul O'Connell obviously has had a massive influence on that area with Ireland recently. So if your breakdown is slow, then you're obviously shoveling on some pretty poor ball to your 10, and he's going to not be able to pull the strings then and dictate the tempo of the game, be on the front foot. So I think the relationship with 9 and 10 is really, really important. But you have those other factors like the ruck ball that you're getting, and maybe if your pack is struggling as well, that's going to really affect it.
Do you feel like experience and having a balance in the experience between the 9 and 10 is actually hugely important at this level, or is it more about the two styles being simpatico? It doesn't really matter if you've got 100 caps in Sexton and Craig Casey with hardly any caps because the style is simpatico, but it might not actually make that much sense to have Conor Murray and Carty, for example. It would be better to have Casey and Carty, irrespective of the fact that they don't have any time playing together, or they don't have between them 150 caps, that actually their styles also work together.
Yeah, I do think combinations come into it. Excuse me. Like if it's a case of which Ireland seem to be moving towards, a really up tempo, high tempo game, and obviously Gibson Park, I suppose, is the man with the 9 jersey at the moment, and his ability to, I suppose, get the breakdown quickly and move the ball quickly. So then I suppose that's why Craig Casey is probably in the squad as well, because he has similar attributes in terms of moving the ball. He gets the breakdown quickly and he flashes the ball. So and that's going to, I suppose, create the tempo and the game plan that this current Irish management are really pushing for. But I do think then, and I suppose why Murray then, where he fits into that, I think you have to have the ability to change a game plan, and the experience that he has. He can play that up tempo game plan at times. He's been criticised for not doing it, but he certainly can play that. We've seen him, numerous times throughout his career. Maybe not more recently, but he can play that game plan. But you have to be able to adapt to maybe conditions if conditions don't allow and dictate that you have to play a slower tempo. And obviously, we know about his game management skills. So if a Sexton or whoever went off at 10 and you're bringing on a less experienced out half option, then Murray can dictate the options, and you can bring him off the bench or like I said, if it's I suppose a more abrasive game dictated by the weather, then the likes of Conor Murray would add value and be able to manage a game. So I think those combinations are important. But look, I think you have to pick each position on its own entity as well. So just because you're changing the 10 doesn't mean you should probably rip up the game plan and change the 9 as well. So at stages you might be dictated to in terms of whether how a game is going, but I don't think you should be dictated to in terms of combinations. That's my own feeling anyway.
That ability to recognise how to dictate a game as a number 9, how long does that take to actually develop and to become an expert on it? Because obviously Conor Murray's got a wealth of experience to be able to do it, but do you look at the other scrum halves around the squad and say no problem, or do all of them possibly need more experience to get to the way Conor Murray looks at the game?
Yeah, one is a good question. I think you have a natural feel for a game, and having the ability then to, I suppose, pick the right option. It comes with experience, and it doesn't mean you have to be playing with Ireland to get that experience. You can get that experience playing against Connacht in the sports ground in the Pro 14, and I suppose that's the only question mark I'd have over Greg Casey at the moment. Like I said, he's got all the skills and the raw attributes to be an international 9. He showed that. But I suppose the only question mark is, when it is a really, I suppose, a slow, abrasive game, whereby it becomes more tactical. And we even saw that in the Pro 14, even against Connacht, with himself and who was at 10 with him.
Healy or Crowley?
No, maybe, yeah, it was Joey Carberry, maybe. I think,
pre-injury. Yeah.
So it was a pretty abrasive game. It wasn't a fast-flowing, free tempo game, and it was really around game management. And just a few of his decisions maybe showed that inexperience about managing a game in those tight conditions, whereby it wasn't flowing, it wasn't really high tempo game. So I think he'll have learned a lot from that experience. So again, next time he maybe faces those conditions, he'll have looked at the game, he'll have analysed the game, he'll have talked to the coaches, and he'll really appreciate the value maybe in maybe dinking the ball in behind or whatever. So again, he's going to get that, and it doesn't mean that he has to play 10 caps for Ireland to get that, but I think he'll pick that up in the league, he'll pick that up in the Heineken Cup games when he's coming on. So look, hopefully he'll get a start in a couple of the big Heineken Cup games at some stage. I think that will also help him, in a real high pressure environment, whereby each decision he makes is going to be, I suppose, vital to the victory. Or obviously, if he makes a couple of wrong decisions, then it might end up in defeat. But they're the lessons you kind of learn as a halfback. And look, I suppose the games that he has played, the Heineken Cup or the Champions Cup hasn't really kicked off yet, and that's probably, I suppose, it's no fault of the competition. It's just the way it's played itself out with COVID and with the groups and the kind of mismatches that have happened. So hopefully, once we get into the next round, it looks like it's going to really kick off, and I think that experience as well for him, as well as I suppose his potential to play with Ireland in the next few weeks as well, will add him some valuable experience. But I think, from growing up playing schools rugby, playing club rugby, and then the introduction out to professional rugby, I think he's learning pretty quickly.
Let's get to the depth chart then. So who's number 1 on your list?
I think Gibson Park has to be, purely based on his recent performances in the Irish shirt. Even the game against Japan. I know Japan were criticised after, but it just kind of, we now know that Japanese team are still very, very competitive, and that Ireland first half performance, Ireland ripped them apart, and it kind of was maybe an introduction to how Andy Farrell wants his team to play. And I think Gibson Park was really at the centre of that. He was the fulcrum of that performance, and like I said, his work getting to the breakdown quickly and whipping the ball away. But he had a few little nice subtleties to add there. I remember he had a little a ding through to, I think it was for Conway, to finish in the right corner. So he just showed that he was a natural footballing 9, and obviously then backing that up, playing against his native country, and guiding Ireland to another fantastic performance against them. So I think he's at the moment he's the man with the 9 jersey, and until either someone behind him has an unbelievable I suppose vein of form, or else his form dips, I think he's the number 9 at the moment for Ireland, and I think deservedly so.
He's going to turn 30 next month, and you kind of, there's no perfect age for any sports person because it depends on injuries and it depends on experience. He's relatively inexperienced as an international. This is 12 caps into his Ireland career at this stage, but it's a bit of a sweet spot, I suspect, for somebody who you reach full understanding of your athletic requirements. You also understand what the vagaries of the professional game are going to be like, but that knowledge of having played hundreds and hundreds of games and getting the starts that he is getting at the moment is around 30, but it should be the peak. He's in his sweet spot at the moment.
Yeah, I think so. Look, athletically, he looks very, very sharp just in terms of fitness levels. But you watch him when Ireland make a line break, and his ability to get upfield very, very quickly. Look, his speed looks to be up there with the best of them. So, in terms of that, and like you said, then in terms of his rugby intellect and his rugby experience, I guess, look, I don't know how many games he played in New Zealand, but we all know about the exposure to the best players in the world. And you talk to any coach or any player coming from there, I suppose having that, experience of playing against some of the best players in the world and playing with them, so that I suppose that different tactical maybe appreciation and maybe influence as well. So that'll bear fruit, and that'll be a positive influence on the Leinster group and the Irish group in particular. So yeah, I think just because he's only got 12 caps with Ireland, like I said, that doesn't mean he's not an experienced 9, and that doesn't mean that he can't bring all his experience to the party. So far when he's played with Ireland, and I know this will probably be his first major Six Nations campaign as a top dog, but I think based on the way that Ireland are trying to play, based on what we're trying to bring to the game plan, I think he's the man best suited to carry that out plan for Andy Farrell.
Because of the change in the style of play, and because of, I guess, the attachment with Conor Murray to the success under Joe Schmidt, do you think that there'll be more questions about who actually is the second choice to Gibson Park if things do progress this way? Do you think that Conor Murray will essentially be, I guess, attached to the regime that is no longer in charge, and the style of play that is no longer the style of play for Ireland?
Yeah, look, fortunately for Conor, there's going to be question marks over his selection for the rest of his career by the looks of it. Look, he's got 92 caps for Ireland, and we all know his experience with the Lions as well and Munster. And I suppose when somebody is around for so long anyway, I think familiarity might breed a bit of contempt as well from a fan's point of view, from a media's point of view. So he'll always have question marks to answer, and I suppose his style as well is probably a bit more relaxed or natural than the likes of Gibson Park or Craig Casey or even Luke McGrath, those guys competing for the position. He's just, he's a longer stride than them, he's a taller player than them, so it might look like he's not maybe getting to the breakdown as quickly. But if you talk to any 10 who's played outside him, none of them have any issue with his delivery. In fact, they all love his delivery, the speed of his pass, where he puts the ball on the money majority of the time. I guess the issue and the main complaint over Murray, obviously, over the last couple of years has been his tendency to, I suppose, go to the air in terms of, box kicking, putting ball to foot too much. And from my point of view, looking from the outside, I think that's probably, would assume that's more to do with a tactical approach from the team, and him carrying out those orders rather than his natural game. Look, he is a fantastic box kicker. When he's on the money, he's the best box kicker in the world. So, he has to use that strength at a certain amount of times in a game. But I think particularly with this Irish setup, I think it's going to be less tendency to slow the ball down and go to the air, and more of an emphasis on getting quick ruck ball and continuing to play a tempo. And I think he is capable of still doing that, and he can use that ability to put the ball on the money in front of his 10, because his pass is spot on when he's flowing. Okay, so I think he's still very, very capable and still very, very deserving of being in the Six Nations panel. And I think he's still probably number 2 in my book. Like I said, he can bring that experience to the party. another aspect of his game that's very much underestimated is his defensive capability and his defensive responsibility with the team. So, and come Six Nations time and come World Cup time down the line, maybe you won't get that fast tempo game at times. Maybe it'll be more of an abrasive game whereby, whether it's a France or whether it's South Africa or whoever it is, that the game is slowed down or the game is on a knife edge, and you want your most physical 9 on the park to basically front up. So I think that's probably underestimated too. We're all focused on attack, and I think we probably should be, because in order to get to where we want to get as a country, and in a World Cup in particular, our attack needs to be more varied, our attack needs to be more dangerous. So yeah, I think we should focus on that. I think Murray can contribute to that, but I do think other aspects of his game are probably underestimated because he's delivered for so long.
I just let's talk about the box kicking for a second. Is he a victim of his own success in some ways? In that you said there, when he's on the money, he's best box kicker in the world. So Joe Schmidt would have looked at that and gone, with the way the rules are at the moment, that gives us a relatively good opportunity to maintain possession and also is an important attacking threat for us. So the coach dictates that we're going to be this heavy aerial team, physically abrasive. That's one of our strengths, and we'll be very strong from the set piece, and that's how we're going to win games. And did Johan van Graan look at that and decide, well, that suits me too? So that actually, when he plays for Munster, under Van Graan, he's been told to do something similar to what he was told to do for Ireland, when actually, who knows what, because he's never told us, who knows what his own innate game actually is.
Yeah, no, I think he's definitely, as you said, a victim of that. Look, he still has the choice to make every time he comes to a ruck. He's really in charge of that. So, and look, he's got 92 caps for his country. So I suppose it would be a bit naive of me and yourselves to think that he's handcuffed by this regime, that he has to kick every time he's in his own half or whatever. So, and look, he doesn't kick every time he's in his own half. So obviously that's probably slightly exaggerated by the conversation around him. But look, I do think definitely that when Rassie Erasmus would have been getting Munster back on track, that his focus was definitely on Munster being competitive, and his focus was on Munster exiting. You exit your half, you don't invite pressure on. So Conor Murray obviously being the best box in the world, and we get our wingers chasing. So he definitely embraced that, and then he encouraged teams to play Munster in their own half. So I assume I haven't played under the current Munster regime, but based on what we've seen, there hasn't been any great ambition to play at a high tempo, any great ambition to get the likes of Keith Hurls, Andrew Conway, these guys, Ebo on the ball early and give them space out wide. Unfortunately, up until this year, where there's maybe some signs that we're trying to play in a more attacking brand in Munster, it has very much been, our wingers were contesting, our wingers were chasing box kicks. So, and I think Munster have realised that they need to move away from that in order to compete, in order to be successful. I do think Murray is capable of that, like I said. So, yeah, I think he's definitely, I suppose coaches have designed game plans around that strength, and particularly probably the South African coaches. So maybe it's just about him consciously trying to move away from that and adapt and really focus on now the opportunity for him to probably re-embrace playing rugby at a really, really high tempo, which again, I said he is capable of.
Yeah, okay. It'll be interesting to see how well he adapts to the new regime in Ireland. Who's third? Is it automatically Casey because he's in the squad at the moment? And is that right as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, that's my probably biggest point of, I suppose, debate. I'm not really sure who should be third. I think obviously Casey at the moment he's there, and they're probably looking at the next World Cup, which I think is a good way of I suppose preparing, because previously we might have had the more I suppose reserved or conservative selection. Craig Casey is not that. Like I said, he's relatively inexperienced even in his professional capacity. As he's 40 or 50 caps with Munster, if he has that. And like I said, I suppose he hasn't really been tested. Even the Heineken Cup games that he's played, they've either been, bar the last game when he came on, and Munster were chasing a game with, I think he came on with about 8 minutes to go over in cast, and he did that a bit. I was unlucky. he dropped the ball. He could have potentially been under the sticks for he had a lovely support line, added a good bit of tempo, and obviously they had that control getting over the line to snatch victory. But I suppose prior to that, any of the games he's played in Europe have been, games that were won that he's coming off the bench, or games that were one-sided. So again, has he been really tested when everything's been on the line, when it's been really, really high pressure.
Luke McGrath has, obviously.
Yeah, Luke McGrath has. And I'm a big, admirer of Luke McGrath. He was, I think, Leinster Player of the Year back in 17 or 18. He's a Heineken Cup winner. He's captain Leinster numerous times. He's 5 or 6. I don't know how many titles Leinster have in the Pro 14, but he's obviously got, a lot of respect within that Leinster dressing room in particular, but good bit of experience with Ireland as well. So I think, look, you see again how Leinster are playing. I know against Bath the last day, it was another mismatch, so you can't judge too much into it. But another guy who's probably, maybe you can feel a bit maybe peeved that he hasn't had more Irish caps. But again, look, you can't criticise maybe the potential that that Craig Casey has. So I think it's good to give him more experience, good to give him more exposure to the Irish camp. I think the benefit of the likes of Luke McGrath, I think we know, if we call on him, we know what he can do. He has that experience playing with Ireland. He has that experience playing with Leinster in the big games. So I think we develop Craig Casey. I think it's probably the right choice. We expose him to the top class international rugby. I'm assuming, I'm not sure that it'll be 1 and 2. Conor Murray at number 2, Gibson Park as the 9. But Craig Casey might get on the bench for a couple of games, and I think it'd be great to get him that exposure and bring him on with 30 minutes, 20 minutes to go in a Six Nations game that's in the melting pot. So I think he has the capability of being a top class international line. So I think it's probably a good call that he's third choice at the moment.
Are Marmion or Doak close to Casey, close to McGrath? What's
Yeah, look, I'd probably, if I needed to bring in a 9 outside of those 3, I'd bring in Luke McGrath straight away. But Marmion, to be fair, his form of Connacht this year has been very, very impressive. Another guy who's very unlucky, and he's done nothing wrong. He was involved in Grand Slam winning squads and teams, and came on off the bench and covered the wing in a few times for Ireland as well. So another guy who's just been very unlucky. Look, it's a position that we're kind of blessed with in terms of depth at the moment, and even that game we spoke about, that Craig Casey might have learned a few lessons from against Connacht. I think conversely, Kieran Marmion probably showed his experience that day. So that's probably the value and the ability that he still has. He definitely still has the ability to play international rugby. So look, he's unlucky to be position 4 or 5, probably 5 in my book. But again, another guy that if you called into the 23 in the morning, he'd very much do a job for you. And he's a very, very good 9, and he's never let Ireland down, or he's never let Connacht down. So and his form, like I said, since the start of the season has been very, very good. And again, Connacht are playing that kind of brand of rugby that's high tempo, that's exciting to watch. So himself and obviously Blade are very much at the forefront of that. So Marmion's form has been very, very good. And another guy who, again, himself and Luke McGrath must be kind of scratching their head saying, what do they have to do? But, like I said, I still think it's the right decision to have Murray and Craig Casey at 2 and 3.
All right, Tomas, we'll leave it there. Good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers, boys.
It's a relatively rude health for Ireland when it comes to the scrum-halves, and there's a good bit of experience and title winning. Nowhere near the team at the moment.
Yeah, and another name you could add to the list is Caelan Blade, who looked sensational on the ball on Sunday afternoon as well. So I guess it's because there's only one jersey on the starting team, that
and they never get replaced, really.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
it's not like you can just sub somebody in there, and I don't know, maybe.
Well, it's the new style of play for Ireland probably tires the 9 out a little bit more.
Maybe. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. At 8:39, it's time for
The Beef is Real.
Well, I don't like him, and I don't have to work with people I don't like.
Patrick Vieira is 6'4", starts having a go at Gary Neville. He says, come and have a go at me.
You should have gone to Specsavers, Charlie.
Well, maybe you should go also then, Jeff, because you couldn't see driving home the other night.
Don't you ever talk about me!
So I think your arguments back and forward there, Tommy. That's the point.
I'm wondering...
Just let me finish. Let me finish.
I'm gonna let you finish. It's pure constipated.
You can forget about Sean Kavanagh as far as he's a man.
If you're going to be critical, then you've got to make sure you've got something to back it up with, don't you?
Maybe the coaches were maybe panicking a little bit.
To me, you've got to have a little bit of a better record than that.
The beef is real.
This is possibly the greatest beef that's ever developed in the history of the Premier League. We have had Haaland against Roy Keane, we have had Roy Keane against Patrick Vieira, but nothing comes close to Roy Hodgson against Harry the Hornet. We're going back to Stephen's Day 2016. It is Watford against Crystal Palace. Wilfred Zaha is booked for diving by Mark Clattenburg. He goes down inside the area in the 87th minute of the 1-1 draw, but he is denied a second penalty in the match, and he is booked. It's Sam Allardyce's first game as Crystal Palace manager, and he has to settle for a point. After the game, Harry the Hornet taunts Wilfred Zaha. Have a look at this. Look at the mascot, who is highlighted here.
Oh yeah, that's him there, top left-hand corner.
And a big belly flop. Now, the camera will show us pretty soon Wilfred Zaha's reaction to all of this. A little bit annoyed, I think. Bit of a sarcastic clap. Could be worse. So this is how this whole beef starts. This is 26th of December 2016. And Zaha, obviously, brushing it off. He sees it as a joke.
But, he's pissed off.
I guess the gauntlet has been laid down by the Hornet at this moment. Sam Allardyce is not happy. He says the mascot is out of order, isn't he? If someone is diving, they don't get that angry. There's contact. It wasn't given. And then, according to a couple of newspapers, Allardyce suggests that there might be consequences for the mascot. And then he says that's up for Watford to sort that out. The Premier League and the FA can look at that and do what they want to do. Watford then decided they won't take any action against mascot Harry the Hornet following his controversial mocking of Wilfred Zaha. Walter Mazzari is one of the billion Watford coaches over the last couple of years. He's the guy in charge at that point. He said, let's laugh all together about this. Everything doesn't have to be a drama. I couldn't see the penalty incident from where I was standing. Believe me, I didn't see that. Or our penalty. It becomes a relatively big story. They talk about it in Ref Watch on Sky Sports. Dermot Gallagher is asked about it and says Zaha will argue that he is trying to incite him, but it is good that his colleagues have laughed it off. It's Christmas, isn't it? A time of fun, and maybe it is just time to calm down. And in fairness, Wilfred Zaha goes to Twitter and posts this a photo of diving judges. Harry the Hornet, though, replies to Wilfred Zaha with a picture of Len Goodman downgrading his 8 to a 7. Not everybody's taking it as a joke. One Crystal Palace fan replies to official Harry the Hornet saying, trying to mock a Premiership footballer. Nice try. Take a look at your occupation before you act. Tosser. And then in August 2018, just under 2 years later, Roy Hodgson is the Crystal Palace manager. Before a game against Watford, he is asked about it.
And Roy, the last 2 games at Vicarage Road, there have been diving controversies involving Wilf last April. He said afterwards there was an agenda against him. The previous match, Harry the Hornet was on the pitch diving behind Wilf. What did you make of all that, and has there been an agenda? Is there still an agenda against Wilf Zaha?
That's his words, not mine. I mean, if you're asking me whether Harry the Hornet, who I presume is the mascot, should dive in that way, I think it's disgraceful. Because that's not what football matches are about. And certainly if it's provoking the crowd into looking for something which isn't there, it should be stopped. Wilf Zaha does not dive for penalties. He gets knocked over sometimes. Sometimes he gets knocked over or unbalanced without it necessarily being a foul or a penalty, because he runs at such speed and he's got such agility with the ball. But he certainly doesn't dive. But of course, unfortunately, if teams try to take every advantage they can, you've mentioned the mascot, I would be very disappointed if a Crystal Palace mascot was doing something like that to provoke the crowd against an opponent. And if I found out about it, I'd stop it.
I love the bit at the start where he's like, Harry the Hornet, who I presume is the mascot. This nobody who is their mascot. Well, the news for Roy Hodgson is himself and Harry the Hornet are now one. Harry the Hornet is your mascot now, Roy Hodgson, the new Watford FC boss.
Dive away, do what you can. He had, I was looking, what was it? Kayla the Eagle was his mascot at the time. So there must have been some kind of mascot off. Mascots, I think we should have more mascots. I'm in favour of them.
Yeah,
and this nonsense.
I mean,
this is class.
Absolutely, anything they can do to rile the opposition. Who was it? There was somebody taking a free throw recently in the NBA, and they had to tell the Milwaukee Bucks mascot to get out of his way because he was waving his hands, and the referee had to instruct the mascot to walk away, and he sadly returned to the tunnel, I think.
The beef is real, but hopefully it's solved now, or else the mascot's getting fired. Who knows? That might be the first thing Hodgson does to assert his authority.
Yeah, we'll keep you up to speed on that, but that is this week's Beef is Real.
Well, I don't like him, and I don't have to work with people I don't like.
Patrick Vieira is 6'4", starts having a go at Gary Neville. He says, come and have a go at me.
You should have gone to Specsavers, Charlie.
Well, maybe you should go also then, Jeff, because you couldn't see driving home the other night.
Don't you ever talk about me.
So I think that your arguments back and forward there, Tony. That's the point.
I'm wondering...
Just let me finish. Let me finish.
I'm gonna let you finish.
It's pure constipated.
You can forget about Sean Kavanagh as far as he's a man.
If you're going to be critical, then you've got to make sure you've got something to back it up with, don't you?
Maybe the coaches were maybe panicking a little bit.
To me, you've got to have a little bit of a better record than that.
The beef is real.
Right. The man with the hat, Jamiroquai, our own resident Jamiroquai, virtual insanity time. I think, John, for this, we're going to have to insist that you wear the hat for virtual insanity too, because you were wearing it during the commentary and it seems to give you some sort of magic. It's like the Samson hair, it's other aspects of mythology that I can't suddenly remember now that I've gone down this rabbit hole.
I think Jamiroquai might have a different type of hat. I might have to get one of Jamiroquai's hats.
I mean, he's a man of many hats.
I think I have one at home, actually. Somebody left it at our house years ago. I don't know why.
Is it Jamiroquai?
It's quite close to a Jamiroquai hat, I think, actually. So it's there and it's been there for a while. Nobody wears it. Nobody's into hats. So
bring it in.
Bring it in for you, John.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. When Stewie Griffin was beating Brian up in Family Guy, he goes, "You got until 5 o'clock. Do you hear me? You got until 5 o'clock." And that's when the Farmers Insurance Open begins at Torrey Pines today, because the NFL playoffs are on and they want to finish it early. They want to finish it this week because I believe CBS have got the rights for the NFL playoffs.
That's right. Nathan was saying that earlier. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So a few near misses last week.
Sahid Tigala was 200-1 and he was tied at 11th in the final round and he never could get it going. So last week wasn't. I can't try and claim that it was close, but it wasn't.
Okay. So this week?
This week we got Torrey Pines Farmers Insurance Open, huge field. John Ram is in it, who won the US Open at the South Course, which is used for 3 of the rounds this week at Torrey Pines. Last year he won the US Open there. Got Justin Thomas, Hideki Matsuyama, Xander Schauffele, Bryson DeChambeau, Brooks Koepka, Justin Johnson, an elite field starting today. So I'm actually going against the grain. I'm going for players that I'm looking to make the breakthrough. And the headline tip is showtime. We're back in showtime. So Patrick Reed was quoted about Will Zalatoris saying that he's supposed to be in films. Every time I've seen him, he always just has this kind of walk about him. That's just kind of the way he is. He could either play golf or be in Hollywood. And we remember what happened at the Masters, and he was second last year at the Masters. Will Zalatoris is going to win on the PGA Tour. It's just a matter of when. Tied for 6th last week, tied for 7th in this last year. He's got the long irons down pat. He's back in form. I think he's putting better. He's changed his technique. Will Zalatoris, showtime, 5 each way, 28-1. The headline tip for the Farmers Insurance Open. Another player has to win soon after dusting John Ram in the Ryder Cup of Scotty Scheffler. 25-1 for 4 each way. Scotty, 67 in the final round last week to tune up for this. 8 top 10s last season, including a top 10 at the US Open at the South Course, tied 7th then. When is it going to happen? It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when for Zalatoris and Scheffler. So I'm on side of these two big guns. The third player is Patrick Rogers, 150-1 for 3 each way. Really like this guy as a good outsider this week. He's a long driver of the golf ball. He puts well on these Poano greens. He's been tied for 4th and tied for 9th in this tournament in the past. He was the 54-hole joint leader in 2017. Nearly lost his card last year, won it, came back with 2 top 10s at the end of last year. This was a guy who was the best amateur in the world. He was the best college golfer in Stanford. He had a better scoring average than Tiger Woods. Hasn't happened for him as a pro. But a bit like Seamus Power, I think Patrick Rogers, if he can just make the breakthrough, and he loved Torrey Pines South, could be a factor at the PGA Tour this season. I think he's better than his form pickers have suggested, 150 to 1 for 3 each way, Patrick Rogers. Maverick McNeely, another guy, 66 to 1 for 2 each way. Best amateur in the world as well, played in 2 Walker Cups, already has a second in the tour this season, 15th in this tournament. 2 years ago was long enough off the tee, Maverick McNeely. I think he's also going to make a breakthrough. And a couple of outsiders, Luke List is 80 to 1 for €1.50 each way. The top player on the States in terms of strokes gained tee to green, but he's 208th in putting. So the putting is obviously the weakness with Luke List, has yet to win, but he does put better at Torrey Pines, where he's been 10th and 12th in the past, and 150 to 1 shot is to finish. Joseph Bramlett for €1.50 each way. Really happy how he's driving the golf ball. He's third in driving distance, and if he's happy how he's driving the golf ball, he's going to give himself opportunities. He was tied for 18th in this last year. He's a better player now. He won the Corn Ferry Tour Final Championship at the end of last season on that satellite tour. 2 good finishes in Hawaii and in California in the last couple of weeks. So Joseph Bramlett, Luke List, Maverick McNeely, Patrick Rogers, I really like as an each way play at 150 to 1. And then the 2 guys to break through, hopefully one of them this week, Scotty Scheffler and Showtime. Will's at his horse.
All right, JD, that's this week's Virtual Insanity. Anything else you want to talk to us about?
Not really. It was an interesting story at the back of the UK Times about a cryptocurrency firm going bust. And the Dave McWilliams stuff is definitely worth checking out, folks. The conversation he had with Joe Molloy last week about cryptocurrencies and fandom. And I think that there needs to be a bit of a deeper dive on what cryptocurrencies are and more of an explainer and an educator. And obviously, Dave McWilliams was doing that on the show last week. But I think people need to be doing their due diligence before they get involved in this, because it seems possibly to me, and maybe I'm just a cynic, that it's too good to be true.
Iconic is the company that has gone tits up. They had deals with La Liga in Spain, with the McLaren Formula 1 team and several leading European football clubs. It's collapsed in Monaco. So it was like a social media engagement platform, which a lot of the other ones are, that have raised, hundreds of millions to try and capitalise on the popularity of crypto and the popularity of NFTs, and this has gone belly up. You're seeing at the moment there's massive selling off of crypto. It's just going to be very interesting to see exactly what happens over the next while.
Odell Beckham got screwed, didn't he?
He's taken, so he is taking his salary in crypto was what?
Yeah, he got paid in Bitcoin.
But he didn't.
Oh.
He got paid in cash and was buying Bitcoin.
Oh, sorry.
With it was actually what happened. So the LA Rams are not
Fake
buying
news.
Bitcoin to give to him. He was saying, and he was advertising it. But Bitcoin's come down 50% since the peak in July. Was it July when it was it? Or certainly it's not down 50% year on year, but it is down 50% from its peak. So, and various countries are moving to see if they can ban it, which obviously very difficult to do. But China seems to be able to do a lot of stuff that we thought was difficult when it comes to the internet. So maybe they'll be able to pull it off. John, good stuff. Thanks very much for that. Keeping a close eye on that. You can get the Virtual Insanity stuff on the OTB Sports app and on otbsports.com. John will be back on Saturday afternoon and Off the Ball on News Talk as well. Tsitsipas is through in the Australian Open. Medvedev's out on court at the moment. We'll keep an eye on that one for you across the day and across all of our sports bulletins too. Nick Kyrgios is in a bit of trouble with the guys that they've beaten. So he's still in the doubles, and Nick Kyrgios is an absolute, and this is on eurosport.co.uk, K ****. I don't really know what that word is.
Unless they've misspelled something.
I thought I was pretty good at swearing.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought that it's not one of those things that but it turns out I'm not.
Four-letter word.
He has the maturity of a 10-year-old, according to a fellow pro, after the latest double circus. So, Michael Venus, he's not a fan of the antics at the court. That we've been talking about that over the last while, and maybe we'll get some more details on. He's still alive in the doubles, and maybe he'll just become a doubles show pony, and that's the future for Nick Kyrgios, and he'll win like loads of majors, and he'll be happy with that.
Everybody's so angry in Australia at the moment. Like Shapovalov versus Nadal yesterday was pretty angry as well. I mean, accusing the umpire of corruption. Everybody just needs to chill out just a little bit.
He rode back from that, but then was still like, no, but he still gets unfair treatment. It's 8:53 a.m. this morning. It's time for us to do something completely different. We're going to the Mid-Atlantic. MTU sports psychology lecturer Karen Weeks aims to be the first Irish female solo rower 3,000 miles across the Atlantic. Set off in December, she's going to be only the 20th woman to complete a solo voyage across any ocean, and she's raising funds for the RNLI and for Laura Lynn, and we hope we're going to be able to speak with Karen right now. Karen, can you hear us, and where the hell are you in the world at the moment?
I can hear you for sure. I can hear you loud and clear. Hopefully you can hear me. And I'm about 1,300 nautical miles from Barbados, and 1,686 nautical miles from Gran Canaria. So I've gone past midway, and I'm sitting here bobbing around the ocean chatting to you.
That is absolutely sensational. So you're more than halfway, and how are you feeling emotionally and physically?
I feel pretty good. You know, I've had a lot of challenges now on the road. I knew it was going to be hard, but there's been an awful lot of stuff thrown at me, to be fair. I'm feeling pretty good physically. I'm feeling good. I'm a bit tired, but that's grand. And mentally it's pretty good. I was in the storm there the other day. That was challenging for sure. I ended up in about a 4, 6 or 7 in this localised storm, and it took me around the Atlantic for the guts of 24 hours. So things like that are challenging. But it's beautiful out here, and like this morning the sun is just rising, and the wind is meant to pick up today, and it's going to be in an easterly direction, which is perfect for me heading for Barbados.
Can you describe to us what that storm is like and the exact challenge it poses to you?
Yeah, well, it just basically big seas came up very quickly, and obviously big wind, so I just had to set the boat up so that it wasn't going to capsize, and that we weren't going to tear down the wave and sort of pitch pole across the thing. So yeah, I just put up a load of ropes and drogues at the back, and there's this a drogue is like a big sort of sock, like a windsock that you can put out, and that slows the boat down and keeps it under control. But but other than that, like there's been so many highlights and so many beautiful. Like even last night, I was rowing from about 3:00 this morning, and there was meteor showers, and like there's silver meteors breaking down into the sky, and then there's golden ones breaking down, and it's pretty impressive. You know, in the wildlife, I've seen hammerhead sharks and whales and dolphins and storm petrels, and there's so much out here. You know, it's fascinating, really.
That is mad. When you see the hammerheads, are they coming close to you?
I just saw one, and actually, do you know what happened was I was looking out the left-hand side of the boat, and I clocked them on the head with my right oar. I felt my oar hitting something, and I looked over to the right, and there was this hammerhead looking at me, and he actually zipped over to the left-hand side where I had a GoPro funnily set up, so I actually got a bit of footage of him just swimming alongside the boat. But he was a big guy, like, and they're funny-looking creatures, but it's probably not the best guy to give a cloud over the head to. But there's the wildlife out here is just it's just mind-blowing. It's incredible, really.
So Karen, how long more before you actually is Barbados your end target, and how much longer will it take you to get there?
Yeah, Barbados is my end target. I'm out here, this is day 52, and in those 52 days, by the way, I've met one person, one boat. I've met a few boats, but I've actually been chatting to one live human. It's amazing. I've been chatting to people at home for sure, but just face to face. I would imagine, I'm hoping the trade winds are starting to kick in here, which are just the winds coming from the east, and that'll really, really help me. So I would hope to be in Barbados in the next 4 to 6 weeks. That's sort of the plan, but you just don't know with the Atlantic. You really just don't know what way it's going to treat you, you know.
What is that solitude like? I mean, it's obviously if you're seeing some unbelievable things, it is a completely just an insane experience sitting here listening to you talk about it. Like, how well prepared were you for that? I guess some of the challenges and also some of the beauty of being out there on your own for so long.
Yeah, I'm not a loner, you know. I'm a very sociable person, so yeah, it is sometimes a little bit challenging, but to be fair, I think a lot of the time, like, a trip like this just does not stop. Like, the intensity of the trip doesn't stop, so you actually don't have time to sort of wallow in you being alone, because you're navigating, or you're weather routing, or you're rowing, or you're sorting out stuff safety-wise on the boat and stuff. And I do have, like, obviously I'm chatting to you on this, but I can talk to friends at home, which is really, really helpful. And I mentally preparing for this, I did an awful lot. Having a background, I suppose, in sports psychology, I've done an awful lot of stuff myself on sort of cognitive coping and visualization and all this, and that's really, really been helpful for, like, I give you an example, is one thing I really don't like is thunder and lightning, and the other night I was in thunder and lightning big time, and I had visualized at home in the gym training on the rower. I had pictures, huge big printouts of lightning, and I put it on Spotify with thundery sounds. So things like that have really, I'm really impressed with how beneficial that all that sort of stuff and mental rehearsal has been.
Which is great, because it's like the full verification of all the stuff that you've theoretically understood and studied. That's all good in theory, but what about in practice? Now you'll be like, well, actually, when I was out there floating alone in the Atlantic with the storm 6 whipping up around me, I was able to lean back on my visualization. So when you're dealing with people, sports people in the future, it's like, trust me, this works.
Yeah, exactly. And for my PhD, actually, I went over to K2 in Pakistan, and I was interviewing guys there. And then I wanted to really test that and test the validity of their things, and did they work for me, and then I can transfer them on to other people. And so I cycled solo across Canada, 4,000 miles, and I really pushed at that time as well, and just trying that stuff, all that mental cognitive stuff, and it really does work. And I see it working out here on the Atlantic all the time too,
Karen, one of the other things that you want to do is you want to inspire more women to get into endurance sports. What was behind your own desire to be a leader in that field and to just... Oh, there you go. Unfortunately, the satellite's down.
Yeah, she's...
Goddamn technology. We can't speak to somebody floating on a boat in the middle. What is this?
Yeah, it's like we're going to need a better connected boat. It's like the kind of vanilla version of Jaws.
How does this make you feel, Owen?
Pretty insignificant and useless.
What are you going to do?
Not that. That's for sure. That's unbelievable. It's even just kind of like looking at that map and the sort of just the if you can tell the vastness of it while looking at a map, imagine what it's like in real life. It must just be incredible.
There's nothing there.
Yeah.
So sorry, we're just for our radio listeners, we're seeing a dotted line, which is the bit still to go, and we're seeing the completed line, and it's just past Cape Verde, and there's just the grand sweep of the Caribbean Atlantic still ahead of
her. Is she going to be able to come back with stories about the Bermuda Triangle? It's all nonsense.
Having literally sail through it.
Yeah, nothing there.
Rode through it as opposed to sailed. I should. Okay, it looks like we're having some difficulty, unfortunately, getting the line back. So I think we got enough there, though. That was, it's wild, isn't it?
Oh, it's absolutely unbelievable. It's like clearly somebody who's got a whole pile of practice when it comes to these incredible endurance endeavours, but this just, maybe it's just me, but there's something so incredible about the sea and kind of being out of control on that front. I'd imagine being on the bike and cycling across Canada, there is a sense that, right, it's me in control here, whereas with the sea, you just don't know what it's going to throw up. And that storm the other day didn't sound like she was any bit put out by it whatsoever.
No, the 4,000 miles was across Canada through Alaska and the Yukon. There was a separate cycle from San Francisco to Washington as well, which she was accompanied by Orla Knight, PE teacher from Castletroy in Limerick as well. And she's also circumnavigated Ireland and the Lofoten Islands off Norway in a kayak. So this is hardcore, and this is, I guess it is important when you're going into a team to say, I've studied this. These are the other things that I've done. It's very helpful when you're like, well, what have you done? It's like, well, let me tell you. I'll just give you a little pot of history here. It's like, okay, how do I get better?
Yeah. It's incredible, actually, the sort of self-realisation around the thunder and lightning as well, getting the posters up, listening to Spotify, and that's actually helped.
You can follow her on Instagram. She can do 2021. We'll tweet that link out as well, and you can search Karen Weeks. It's WEEKES. There's a GoFundMe as well to raise funds for the RNLI and for Laura Lynn as well. So fairly sensational stuff there from somebody who I hope is inspiring you as opposed to making you just feel small.
Absolutely.
What are you inspired to do, Owen?
Oh, well, maybe actually go for a dip and not swim at all, and or maybe
do a triathlon. Is that what I'm hearing? You're going to do the full triathlon this year? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's not going to happen this year, I'm afraid.
Why not? Come on.
No, I've got good reason not to. That's absolute nonsense when you listen to that. I can't commit to that. I'm sorry.
All right.
My knee is not in a good place.
Oh, we could get you physio.
I'm
somebody will help you with the.
I've got it checked out, and the prognosis is not good.
All right. Okay.
It's quite. It's not good at all.
You blew it out properly.
No, I didn't. No. We'll see. If
You're very uncomfortable here, is this?
Yeah, no, I am.
Okay, I'll move on. Okay. 3 minutes past 9 this morning. If you want to get in touch with us, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Gunnersaurus and Sharky are the best mascots.
Agreed.
Says Sashin on YouTube. Who's Sharky?
I don't know who Sharky is, but Gunnersaurus is definitely the...
Well, we've done a deep dive on Gunnersaurus before. It was one of the best things that Owen has ever done. It actually beats the trip to Mayo as far as I'm concerned. It's cruelly underrated. It needs to do another 10,000. We'd stick that back out again just because you mentioned it there, Sashin. And Brown on YouTube says Karen Weeks is a legend. Fair play to her phenomenal attitude. Is the drop in golf figures partly due to Tiger's decline, or his inability to play due to injury? More to the point. And John says, I totally agree with Nathan. Golfing meltdowns are the most entertaining part of watching the sport, and the Masters broadcaster won't even show a golfer having a meltdown as a policy. Ugh. Let's not get started on the ridiculousness of the do's and don'ts that Augusta have about their sport. So, right. We want to talk about the return of the Allianz football leagues this weekend, and I'm delighted to say Ryan McHugh is with us to talk about this. Ryan, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
I'm very good. Yourselves?
Yeah, pretty good. I'm genuinely looking forward to the return of inter-county action. It feels like it's been away for a very long time at this stage. What's it actually like for you prepping for the games this weekend?
Yeah, I'm actually the same, to be honest with you. I'm really looking forward to the start of the Allianz Leagues. As a player, first and foremost, and I suppose as a supporter even as well, I suppose with everything unfortunate that's going on in the world the last couple of years, we haven't really had a proper Allianz League, so we haven't. So I'm really, really looking forward to getting into the action this weekend. So we've a massive match against Mayo, but even as a supporter, watching the games on TV, listening to the radio, the other games, I'm really looking forward to it. I think in every division there's some massive matches, and I'm really looking forward to it. In terms of that, what you've just mentioned there, the last couple of seasons, how difficult was it for you to assess exactly how well your form was going, how you were going, and how close you were to being ready for what was coming in Championship when you didn't have the full campaign like you hopefully will have this year? Yeah, it was difficult. Not gonna lie, it was tough, I suppose, as you touched on, just to really know where you're at, because it just. I suppose we were lucky enough. We had a couple of league matches last year, but especially the year before, where it was just straight into Championship. It was difficult to understand where you're really at. Other years, you said we always had the Allianz League to judge yourself off, I suppose. So it was tough. I suppose you were relying on a lot of your S&C coaches, your manager to put you in the best shape possible. Thankfully we felt in Donegal we were. We couldn't have blamed. Not being in the best shape or not being match ready on the results we had the last couple of years, But as I said, looking forward to this year, I think we will know a lot more come Championship time where teams are at after the Allianz League. The performances last year, when do you stop talking about what happened last year? Do you ever stop talking about it the next season? Is it always part of the next season's journey because you kind of have to keep absorbing the lessons and make sure that it never goes away? Or as a performer, do you need to completely block out what happened in the past and just look exclusively to the future? How does that work? For me, I think it's probably trying to find the right balance. I don't think you can completely forget about it because you have to take the learnings from it. From every year, not just last year. The last couple of years. I suppose last year we lost to Tyrone. The year before we lost to Cavan. Year before that, lost to Mayo. So we need to take the learnings from every single match. We'd like to think going into this Mayo match this weekend that we would learn a lot from the match that we played a couple of years ago down in Mayo and the Super 8s that we unfortunately lost. So I don't think you can leave just completely turn your back on it and move on to the next year. But I don't like to overanalyze it either because there is a lot of new players and there's different players going to be playing on any given day. So I think it's finding that right balance where you can take the learnings from every single game, whether that's just gone past a week or a year. I think that's hugely important, and that's sort of what I'm trying to focus on going into the Mayo game this weekend. Is from that match down in McHugh Park there, I think it's 2019, that we can take the massive learnings from it, what we done wrong, maybe taking the ball into contact a wee bit too much, getting turned over a wee bit too much, that we can take that into this weekend and try to put them things right.
It's obviously a more acute thing for Donegal, given Tyrone beat you last year, but there is a sense that the fact there was an All-Ireland winner that wasn't Dublin last year, that might have given people renewed hope going into this year. I guess the other point on that is that the last team to have beaten Dublin before Mayo last year was yourselves in 2014, so maybe that was never a mental thing for you. But are you tapping into that notion that a lot of other people are at the moment, that this year is really open season?
Yeah, I do. I do believe that it's anyone's ball game. I think there's a lot of good teams out there at the minute. Obviously you've Dublin, Kerry, Tyrone, Mayo, Monaghan, Armagh. There's a lot of good teams out there. So there is, Cork, there's a lot of top teams. So there is, and I think there's a lot of good footballers playing on every single team. So I think it's just a matter of really focusing on yourself. I know in Donegal that's what we're trying to do. Don't get me wrong. As I said, every game and going into the Allianz League and the Championship, you have to focus a wee bit on the opposition and who you're going to mark and different sorts of stuff. But I think mainly it's about focusing on yourself. And I suppose going back to that, getting yourself and the team 100% ready for the challenge ahead, and getting yourself match fit and prepared for the battle. As I said, we've trained well over the last couple of weeks. We've had a couple of really, really competitive McKenna Cup matches to get ourselves ready for this match. And hopefully we can start this weekend, get a win and build to the year ahead. And hopefully we can get a bit of silver at the end of it.
Was it kind of sickening to be watching Tyrone be the ones who got over the line at the end of the Dublin era? It was Tyrone who you guys were on the field with and things were going quite well for a period of that game.
Yeah, I suppose, listen, it was a bit, listen, I suppose if Donegal's not going to win it, you'd rather see an Ulster team win it than anyone else at the same time, but I suppose it was the fact that we put ourselves in a great position in the Tyrone match, and unfortunately things didn't go the way after that, but as Tyrone, to be fair to them, went on, they improved every single match after us, so they got better and better and better, and we're 100% deservedly All-Ireland winners, you get asked a lot of times now when you meet people, would you win on to win the All-Ireland, different sort of stuff. I don't know, is it as easy just to say that? I think to be fair to Tyrone, as I said, they improved every single match. We definitely put ourselves in a winning position in the Tyrone match, and unfortunately couldn't see it. We should take the learnings from what we've done wrong in the Tyrone match.